What's your carnal theory?
Hey there, you're listening to Carnal Theory, where we talk with experts from around the world to learn how taking command of our sexual story affects our personal wellness, sexual experiences, and relationships with ourselves and others. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Abba, and today on Carnal Theory, we have a guest co-host, Diana, who is My Sexual Bio's research and content manager. Diana, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
And for our regular listeners and watchers, you will recognize our guest this week. We are talking with Caritia. She is back with us, and we are so excited.
Hi, everybody. Good to be back. Thank you for the invitation. I'm happy that, all the stars aligned and serendipity that I get to be on Carnal Theory once again. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Our pleasure. As a intro and reminder for our listeners, Caritia is a kink practitioner, BDSM expert, educator, an artist, a business person, and so much more. It starts to get a little bit ridiculous, but it's on the side of greatness. Also co-founder of both Karada House and the educational platform OhYesPlease, which we will be getting updates on. Caritia, again, it's really, really lovely to have you on the show. Thank you so much for coming back. We are thrilled to dive into the carnal theory that you brought for our consideration today. And as a quick intro to our new listeners, so on every episode with our guests, we ask them to bring a carnal theory for our consideration and yours. And this theory, it's something that's meant to potentially challenge a presumption or a perception that we might have regarding our monthly theme, which this month is sex work, is what we are discussing on the main My Sexual Bio page. So we'll jump in with Caritia's carnal theory. Yeah. We'll have a discussion around that and around some other topics that Caritia is working on and what sex work, how that has been a part of Caritia's life. And then we'll end the episode by looping back on the carnal theory Caritia brought and see if maybe even during this conversation, just this time period, maybe the carnal theory that we're discussing, presumptions or perceptions have changed. So if you would, Caritia, please kick us off. What have you brought for our deliberation today?
So today I've brought the carnal theory of intentional expression is powerful and desirable. Intentional expression is powerful and desirable. Yeah.
The first word that jumped out to me when you sent that over was intentional.
Yeah. I
personally feel like the past, getting closer and closer to 2 years of the change of the times, that intentional has been kind of one of the watchwords, that intentional relationships and who we are engaged with, that has become far more important in people's lives. And just in the vein of life is fleeting, how we can live more intentionally and gain the benefits from that. I'm just wondering, intentional expression, that's a very specific direction. What does that mean for you?
So intentional expression, I think for me is this overall arcing way I want to live my life, like the path I really want to walk, a path that's really considered and thought about, and then I'm sharing those things with other people. I think I talk about intentional spaces. I talk about intention a lot, like the why behind something. The fact that you've given something real consideration as to why it's present in your life, and also to keep it present so I can continuously keep updating myself, right? I can continuously keep challenging myself to be in this life that, as you say, is fleeting, right? You never know what's going to happen next. So if you're going to do something, do it with intention, do it with purpose, do it with feeling, do it with love, do it with passion. I think that's what it is for me. My work, my personal life, where I decide to put my learning energy, where I decide to put my facilitating and teaching energy, how I hold space, like all of these things are really important. And I think I somehow also needed a way to, in a utopic kind of a way, look at my own identity and also look at how that is expressed outside of my personal life. Like how it's expressed in work, how it's expressed in friends, how it's expressed when I walk down the street. Because I know in this time, a lot has happened, a lot has changed for me. Because I had time, right? And I think that's something that many of us didn't feel like we had. But we just didn't recognize it because we were not intentional about it. We were not intentional about how we spend our time, who we spend our time with, why we decide that we want to spend our time with those people or doing that particular project or have that idea or whatever it is. And although I had to work really hard during this time in a very, very different way, that brought something new for me personally, as well as the projects that I'm working on, as well as Karada House, as well as OhYesPlease. OhYesPlease was born from having time and having to do something else, and then looking at what's the intention behind doing it, right? So it's all of this that's kind of happened in this very different space and time that we've had the opportunity to be in. And also because I'm different. Like I'm a very different person to who I was a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. Like really coming into where my needs and my boundaries are again. Really honing in on what is sex, what is sexuality, and what is sex work to me. And like how to express that as a queer person, how to express that as somebody who has always been doing things very differently. So I think it's like such a combination of things. And when I look at intention, when I continuously act like a 5-year-old child and go, why? Then I can dig in a lot more. I could find out a lot more about myself and the ones around me and who I want to have close and not close and why. Like just constantly being this 5-year-old. I love it. It's really fun.
Thank you for the reminder. Yeah, thank you for the underlined reminder of intention, because there's here in the US, there's a lot of push to just get back to normal, the before times of normal, which resonates with me. There's a lot of that I would like as well. I'm not in a huge rush. I have my hesitations, but with that, in thinking that way, we miss all the lessons, or we just completely brush aside the potential lessons gained. And in what you're raising, this intentional expression, this intentional living and awareness and presence, it's important to remember that it is powerful and desirable. 100%. That is 100%. A beautiful, beautiful theory and statement.
I think the thing that's really become apparent, I think, especially to people around me, is that understanding or being with ourselves and expressing who we are then to others is something we've not done. Societally, we've not done it. We don't express ourselves. We expect people to read our minds. right? Of course they know what I want. They know me, but they don't. They don't know you. I don't know. Sometimes you don't even know yourself. I don't know myself, right? How's the other person who I want to be intimate with also going to know if I don't intentionally take the time to tell them? Yes. Yes. You know, why is it that it's so hard for us to express, speak to, name what we like and enjoy when it comes to sex, when it comes to attraction, when it comes to desire? Because often we don't know because we've not done that internal study of ourselves to find out what it is that we actually like. And if we don't know, we're too scared to say that we don't know. So we're spending all this time guessing. Yep. And then when it doesn't go right, then we want to blame. And I'm like, no, I'm done with that. I'm done with the blaming and the shaming and the making people feel guilty. No, let's talk about it. Let's be open, right? Let's have the conversation so we can actually have as much and as maximum fun as we want together, right?
Yes.
This is what I know I missed so much in this time. I missed being able to be close to people. Like, I missed it so much. There's a dimension that's completely gone when you can't be in person with somebody. The type of person who I am and the way that I interact and I learn and I gather information is really through all of my senses. And they just got cut off. And now I can speak to you, I can relate to you, but not fully. Because I can't smell you, I can't see your nuances, maybe I can't even see you because you're behind a screen and you've decided not to put your camera on. Yeah. And that happened a lot, right? Where you can't see how people are, with your eyes. And then you're imagining, or you're asking questions, and maybe you're getting responses, maybe not. And then you want to check in, and it just changes a lot about again, time, about dimensionality, about kinetics, about emotion. I know there were lots of people during this time when we were giving online courses live where people are there and they're crying.
Yeah.
Right? They're laughing. They're feeling shame. Right? But you can't see it all because there's a barrier between you and the other people. And when I started to realize that, I was like, okay, how do we start to change that? How can I manifest it in a way that I can be closer to everyone, even though we're distant right now?
Yeah. Can you speak a little bit about what Karada House and OhYesPlease is and does? Give the listeners a little context.
Wow, context, yeah, because context is great. So Carada House as the first thing. So Carada House is a physical space in Berlin where we offer workshops and we curate a program that is about the body. So that could be anything about the body, basically. But we do a lot of stuff around kink, around sexuality. We have discussions. We have art events. There's all kinds of stuff that happens there, performances. And of course, we got shut down for a period of time, very long period of time. So we transitioned from being a physical space in Berlin to being a virtual one. Because it's my bread and butter. Carada House is the thing that keeps me going and sustains me. And so I needed to find another way to work. So it was moving that over. And because of that and not being able to use the space in the usual way, we were then like, well, what can we do with the space instead? And what do we want to do about making content available later, or to people who are really far away, who can't come to Berlin to travel, etc.? How do we make it more accessible? And I think that's one of the kind of ethoses of Karada House. We wanted to make our content accessible to as many people as we could, especially folks from the queer community, especially marginalized folks, because they're the ones that often get forgotten. Hence, the reason we created Corado House in the first place was because we felt ourselves as queer folk, as marginalized folk, we're not really seen in the mainstream, right? We're this periphery on the side. Turns out we're not really the periphery on the side, but that's how we're seen, and things are not tailored to us.
Right.
So we wanted to create that kind of a space. And then OhYesPlease is the digital content of what we do. So there's different courses from myself, from Emma Steele, from Renee Dessens. There's like a bunch of stuff: play, fight, consent, boundaries, and negotiation. There's impact pay courses on there. Like there's a whole realm of stuff that's accessing sexuality in the body and all of that. So yeah, that's what that is. And we're slowly building more and more content for OhYesPlease, putting stuff on there that we think might be fun and interesting and engaging.
It's a fantastic platform and beautifully done, and encourage all the listeners to go and check it out. Really, there's a lot of awesome classes.
Thank you. Yeah, I love it.
I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about your history in sex work and currently, and how that led to these current projects.
Right. So, wow, big story.
And maybe the place to start is why sex work?
Why sex work?
And what does that mean to you?
Okay. So, to really speak to that, I have to speak to the fact that I've had mental health issues. I have mental health issues. I suffer from depression. I injured my back when I was like 24. So I was in chronic pain for many years. So the profession that I had originally gone into was not one I could continue to access. So for a really long time, after studying for like 8 years, 9 almost, and working in that field, I could no longer do it, physically or mentally. That was devastating for me, devastating. And then I went about trying to find other things that I could do, even in my state, to keep myself uplifted, to keep myself going, realizing that physically, there were things I could do, but I couldn't sustain standing up for 16 hours. Like, I couldn't carry a bunch of stuff. I just really couldn't do everything. So it was me trying to explore myself. It was me trying to explore my own sexuality. And so it started out as okay, I'm not really into what is normative, penetrative, heterosexual sex. That's not really my thing. It's fun if I find the right person and I can engage with them in a way that feels good for me. But it was rare that I could do that. And then I met my first husband, and he and I talked about everything and anything all the time. And one of the things I realized was I was really into pain. I was really super into sensation. I was really into exploring the body in different ways. And over time, I realized, actually, I want to explore this more. I want to find out more. In the UK, which is where I'm originally from, though now I live in Berlin and have been in Berlin for like 10 years now, there were no workshops. There were no access to finding out stuff. You had to just go do it and then see what happened. Very risky, right? But that's what we did. That's what I did. So he and I explored a bit. Then we went to a club one time. He wasn't into clubbing anymore. He only went because I wanted to go. He'd been doing clubbing since he was 16, and I just kind of discovered it was a whole new world. But having then that access, I wanted to go again. And so we agreed that I could still go out and explore, but it was something he didn't want to do. in that exploration, I met someone who took me to a Dominar event, and that was it. Like, I was in. And it kind of, it all kind of snowballed from there. That event led me to meeting other people, continuing to go out to different events. But it's not a cheap thing to do either. Like, it was challenging sometimes to think of creative ways to dress and to go out, because it's very fashion conscious, very external kind of world gaze, and very male gaze also. And then I realized actually I did want to do this professionally. I just didn't want to do it as a hobby. I didn't want to do it as a side thing. And so I just kept finding out how I could do that. I collaborated with 3 other Dominars. We had a space together for a little while in London. But I realized also it wasn't quite the right thing for me. I wanted to do sex work. But again, coming back to my Carnal Theory, I wanted to do that from an intention space of holding space for people and not just be a receptacle to be dumped onto.
Yeah.
And so I never found my way into a studio where I felt comfortable. So I think my way into sex work was very different. It was coming from a bit more of a going to someone's personal space, and then inviting clients to that personal space, and then realizing, oh, actually, some of the time I don't feel very safe. Had some very odd encounters with clients, and then I stopped. I decided it wasn't really the right thing for me after having a particular client who was explaining to me that they'd been to a Dominar 20 years previous and had basically come out of it completely traumatized, and appreciated how I held space for them to actually return. And so that kind of stayed with me when I left and stopped doing it. And then when I came to Berlin, I had the opportunity to do things again in a different way. Berlin's a place where people want to learn stuff. They want a workshop, right? They want to be shown how to do something so they do it correctly. It's a very German mindset somehow. And so I started developing my own workshops and developing spaces for people to come and learn stuff, learn kink stuff, learn techniques, and find out about themselves and what they enjoyed. And Karada House and OhYesPlease is like extrapolated like 20 more times to the kind of space that I wanted to have and the kind of space I wanted to hold. I've also worked in a studio, one that's very much more, giving the sex workers the autonomy they deserve to decide on prices and decide what clients they want to have and all of this. And this has been amazing. So my studio experience has also been a bit different. Not having to give over half my money to a place. So which means I have to work double to actually make the money that I need. I've never had to do that. So I've been fortunate enough to be in spaces where I've been able to give sessions and keep my money and retain my autonomy, which feels very important to me. And then with these new projects, with Carada House, which has now been going for 2 years, and OhYesPlease, which has been going for a year, again, it was reclaiming intentionally autonomy over what I get to do and how I get to share and how I help to empower other people to do the same, to name what they want, to be present in what they're doing, becoming a lot more trauma aware and trauma informed to work with people, becoming a lot more neurodiverse, informed and inclusive, and understanding my own neurodiversity in all of this. I knew I was dyslexic, but I didn't know how much it informed what I did and what I do. And that's something else where I'm like, oh, wow, that's big.
Yeah.
So like it's coming from all kinds of directions, but essentially it's me recognizing I see and perceive the world in a very different way. And how can I express that? How can I share that with other people? And how can I help them and support people to be critically inquiring about their own lives and not just to follow something because someone told you it, which is how I was brought up. Like, if someone tells you something, oh, okay, I'm just going to do it. I'm like, it's how I was raised. It's not how I am. Right. Yeah. So this was the thing. It was like, how do we move, especially with sexuality, right? How do we move to find our own ways in what we desire, right? What we want and what we need, and the levels of that.
Yeah. And sex holds so many walls, and there's hesitations, and you already mentioned shame, which we talk a lot about. Yeah. Sex work specifically has so many taboos around those two words put together. Yeah. Diana, I think you had some questions around, like, I think there's questions around safety and does legalization make sense? Yeah. You want to bring some of those up, Diana?
Well, I think I'd like to start by asking one specific question, since you're talking about your personal story. Yeah. Because as we were going into, looking for the information, I just had this question strike in my mind, which was, what if somebody wants to become a sex worker? Then, like, because you want to become a doctor, yeah, you just go, you find the resources, you know how your life's going to be, right? But what if you want to become a sex worker? That should also be a choice in the whole conversation of we should legalize it. It is actual work. So yeah, the question, I guess, would be, what would you tell somebody that is thinking of this as an option and they want to choose it? What should they do? What should they keep?
What should they do? Yeah. See, this is something that is an awesome question, right? I got into sex work because I felt confident that I could take care of myself. Other people get into sex work because they feel like they have no other option. And other people get into it because they recognize that they have really something to offer and they want to be at service to others. I think all of those things are valid. And I think my key thing is know your boundaries. If you want to get into sex work, know what your body boundaries are, what your emotional boundaries are, and what your mental and psychological boundaries are before you get into it. I think it is something where it is a job. It's genuine work. It is you're part physical interaction, you're part therapist, part psychologist, right? But there's no training for it. And I find this to be, frankly, mind-blowing.
I want to interject. I'm so with you. And I want to interject on something, because what you're bringing up, I have personally grappled greatly with around what we offer at My Sex Bio and what I have personally come to believe. I want to put the preface that I 1,000,000% believe in education and believe that, like, deep, thorough training is immensely useful and has great benefit to society and people's mental health and therefore entire lives. And in the same way that being a listening ear is well understood to be a form of friendship and therapy, just being there for someone, you've already mentioned holding space, doesn't have to require deep, immense training. Do I believe that it should be in our basic education system and something that like is actually a skill to be taught in school? Yes, it's not. And yet we are still able to learn it because I believe that that is carnal to us.
Yeah.
Holding space and listening is carnal. It is part of what has kept us alive. It is in our evolution to listen and absorb and then story tell in different ways and take that information received, process it for our own good. And depending upon what our personalities are, share it for others to also be able to absorb and utilize. Like we, in my opinion, I don't have the science on hand to back this up, but I deeply believe that we have the carnal ability to be therapists and psychologists, and sex in these intimate moments and conversations. You don't even have to be having an act of sex or whatever that means to you. In that intimacy, it allows some other doors to be opened. It allows some vulnerability and therefore trust, limbs to be extended, hands to be extended, to be able to say, like, would you like to, can I trust you, or will you trust me? Can we talk about these things? And what a beautiful, positive job and offering to the world to bring.
Right. Like, and this is something that I struggle with all the time, because I think the reason I fell into sex work was because the education system failed me completely. Right. I have an education. I feel very fortunate. I'm very privileged. I speak English as my first language. I speak French as my second. I'm aiming to learn German at the moment. Like, I have access, but as a system, education is violent to me. As a person who's dyslexic, as a person who's neurodiverse, this system has never been for me. The way I've learned to do what I do is just that, is to experience it, is to recognize I want to be in relating dynamics, whatever that is, with others all the time. Because that's the way I learn. I learn best by doing something. I learn best by getting my hands in, touching, being present, listening, like you said. Like, listening is such an underrated skill, right? Being present, fully, without question, present for another person, that's a superpower. But it's not valued because it's not something that's written on paper. It's not valued because it's not quantifiable.
It's not what the degree is called. The degree isn't called listening powers. It's called psychoanal analysis or therapy,
right?
Or whatever.
A therapist, or it's one of these things. It's like something you want to quantify. But what happens to all of us who aren't quantifiable in that way? I have skills. I have value. But because I don't hold a degree, I'm not allowed to do certain things. Technically, in Germany, I'm not allowed to be a teacher, but I can be a facilitator. That is another complicated story around nuance of language. However, I'm frustrated at the fact that what I do receives less acknowledgement and less value in monetary terms, as well as respectability politics, because other people deem it not proper, whatever that means. My space that I hold for any person or group of people is intentional. It's purposeful. It's there to empower and uplift. It's there for people to have space to be vulnerable, like you spoke about. It's there for people to find new ways to find trust in themselves, because all of their boundaries have always constantly been trodden on and overshadowed and overlooked. because they're not valued. The reason why I feel like I enjoy doing this now, like why I have Karada House, why I like facilitating workshops online, why OhYesPlease is a joy when people have access to the things they didn't have access to before, is because as someone who identifies as queer, as someone who was raised as a woman, though I don't see myself in gender forms anymore, like, no one wanted to listen to me. No one wanted to give me any form of power or independence. Right? I've practically been stripped of all wealth because my voice is not valuable enough, because I'm not cis, I'm not heterosexual, and I'm not male, and I'm not white. So for me to be able to give back in this way, for me to be able to go, actually, we all deserve to understand our own bodies. We all deserve to reclaim our traumas and challenges that we've been through in our lives and go, okay, that's what happened to me before, but what's happening for me now? And how do I navigate those changes that I know are going to sit with me for the rest of my life? I can't change the trauma that's happened. What I can do is help you find and support you in finding ways to make it different, as you can support me doing the same. Right? Instead of us all being in competition with each other, which is how society has us all set up right now. Right? It's not in supporting each other, not supporting each other's voices, supporting each other's bodies, supporting each other's desires. But how can I be in competition and up, the ante, escalate things so I'm the best? No, how about we be on equal footing? Right, but what does that mean? What does equal footing mean? Right? And that's why I like thinking about expression and desire in this way. It's like, actually, to have a conversation for us to understand each other and then be able to go into whatever desire place we want to go to makes more sense to me. I want you to know about me. I want you to understand about me. And you might not understand everything. That's not the point. But I want to be able to say, I feel this. Do you see me and hear me on this level? And for the other person to go, oh, wow, that resonates with me. And actually, I feel a little bit of guilt around that. That's mine to own and be responsible for. But I'm happy we could speak about it. Okay, now what do we want to do? There's no blame in that. There's no shame in that. That's each of us going, this is how I feel about it. This is how this resonates with me with what you said. Now what do we want to do next?
It a bit feels to me almost like the sex work world just ended up being a main door that opened, or the first door that opened that just allowed to hold space for people. Like that seems to be, like, as you're saying, your superpower that you want to bring to the world. And it happened to be this line of work that allowed for that.
I don't even know if it was the line of work that allowed for that. I think it was the space I had to carve out for myself in not feeling held by a system. Right? I feel that our systems are oppressive. And I am someone, when I look at, and anybody that's looked at my work, or you might want to go look at my work, will know that I use the wheel of power and privilege a lot. This tool is super helpful because it helps you to see where you sit and then how then you relate to another person. So I've got two wonderful partners, and when I showed them this tool, they were like, oh, because they really honestly didn't notice or recognize how privileged they were. And so they didn't know actually fully how they're relating to me and my life. And in no way is it about them having to be responsible for me or vice versa, or anybody feeling guilty. It's really genuinely about how do we relate to each other if we've had very different life experiences? What things do we need to discuss to allow me to come closer to you and you to come closer to me? And it not just be a habitual response that you've been taught. I question and I question everything. I question my relationships every day, right? And I do that as a practice, an intentional practice, so that I stay true to myself. And I also stay true to my boundaries, and I stay true to how I want to walk in the world, not defined by someone else, but defined by me and who I am and what I'm bringing and the value in what I'm bringing. And I think that's something that sex work has offered to me, is there is a value in who I am. Is a value in how I am in my body, in my physical self, and then how I share that with somebody else. There's a value in the skill set that I have of being able to tie somebody in rope, of being able to spank someone, or even to like introduce someone to a practice that they've been afraid of, where they just want someone to really genuinely be there with them and hold space for whatever is happening. You know, help them create ritual, help them create presence, help them return to their bodies, return to their physical selves, to have touch, to be touched. And I think that is what's frustrating in the laws that exist in pretty much every single country around sex work. The reason I can do what I do is because in Germany, it's legal to do sex work. It's hard, but it's legal. Everywhere else is illegal. UK, it's illegal. US, it's illegal. Spain, it's illegal. Right? And there are other places where basically I'd end up in jail.
Yeah.
If they even knew what I did.
Yeah.
I think on that note, there was a question that we were meaning to ask you too, which is, there is this whole debate around, if legalizing sex work is what's going to solve the problem. Because, of course, like legalization is a very important part of the whole process of recognizing sex work as sex work and taking the stigma out of there. But even in places where they have done that, certain things have not really changed too much. So I guess this brings us back to where the problem is not really, because in the end, policies and laws are just, an expression of other things, underlying things, personal stories that then become, the story of a community. So, So I guess, I don't know if you have thoughts on where does that really, come from exactly, why that need of just telling other people not to do something and,
See, this is the thing. I think what happened or what has happened is that from a colonialized mindset, sex empowers. It makes you feel great in your body. It makes you realize what pleasure is. It makes you realize, I have a connection to this person, even if it's a brief one, right? It puts you and grounds you in your body so that you can walk forward and do other things.
Owning our bodies at all.
Exactly. And this is the thing, they don't want you to own your body.
And that sounds so radical. And we have a class, fucking Capitalism, that we dive into this for important reasons. And I pause there and I interject there because it makes it sound so radical. They don't want you to own your body. But just to for anybody who was like, whoa, what the fuck at that? Just kind of think about it for a second. Try go with us that this isn't a brainwash thing. This is just a mental exploration. think through, you can start with maybe the education that you've received about your body. Chances are minimal, without like going into a whole other hour-long conversation, like analyzing it. Like if you think about your body education and your sex education, a typical answer is either you didn't have any, it was questionably correct, because here in the United States, not even every state has to give you medically accurate information. So why might be like a question, like, why is that? Why wouldn't they at least give us medically accurate information?
Yeah.
And then like, if you want to keep rolling with that, think of all the products that are pitched to you from the very, very start, be it makeup, be it a t-shirt and looking a certain way, be it a t-shirt with a slogan that makes you feel a certain way. Maybe it's something athletic. Maybe it's you can do it, or you're so cute, you're so pretty, sparkles. Maybe it's think outside the box. Like there's all these messages that, like, without going into like conspiracy woo-woo land, like these are matter of fact, concrete facts that like you can go to your local anything and you can see that this exists. By no means are all of these things bad. Many of these things add benefit and positivity to our lives. Like soap, gorgeous invention, has literally helped like keep humans around. Like there are things that are beneficial to our existence. Yeah. But so like, I just wanted to interject there and be like, it's not like, it is such a radical thought. And we talk about how radical owning our bodies are. So anyway,
I think in that everyone's suffering.
100%. Like that's the important
100%. Like everyone is suffering under the guise of this whole thing, right? Imagine if sex was something we all spoke about very openly all the time. Imagine, right? Where
showing
you knew there was someone that you could go to speak about what was happening for you, right? What was happening in your body. It already starts when we're in our teens, when your parents don't tell you shit about what's going to happen to you unless you're very fortunate and you have very open-minded parents. My parents did not say a word. When I started to bleed, even though people had said, oh, I'm a woman now, I'm on my period, like, I didn't know what that meant. I have no idea what that meant. I just knew I was happy it hadn't already happened to me, because I was seeing my friends going like nuts over not knowing. And then when it happened to me, I was like so ashamed and embarrassed because no one had said anything. No one tells you, right? I think what's fortunate about now is that so much more information exists that is accessible and things are different. But as you said, Abby, like products are pitched at you in a particular color, in a particular way to make you go buy it. And I'm like, I don't have a problem with that, but it's insidious, right? And the same thing happens with how we express our sex and sexuality. They wanted us to procreate after wars, right? I get it. They didn't want anyone to be with someone that couldn't produce children, right? That was the mentality for a while because populations were low, all kinds of reasons, right? But what's the excuse now?
Exactly.
What's the excuse now? What's the reason for this not happening? What is wrong with our society when we can't talk about something that is absolutely, perfectly natural and something all of us are involved in? And in not talking about it, we then also erase asexuality. In not talking about it, we erase transness and gender non-conforming folks. right? We erase a whole bunch we erase being gay, being lesbian, right? We erase all of that.
Like
Because
one
we
by
don't get
one.
one by one, because we don't get to speak about our own bodies. We don't get to embody and be present with our traditions, right? And how if you were in a tribe, the women would take the girls and teach them already. The men would teach the boys. And then you'd have genders in between. All of that has been erased, and it's only now that people are starting to reclaim. And this is something that I find incredible about this time, is that so many of us have changed how we identify, right? How we claim things back for ourselves in our bodies and our autonomy, right? There's a lot more talk about survivors. There's a lot more talk about what we want to do and have for our bodies and how precious they are. What does care mean? Right? In a space where you can actually genuinely talk about what is sex, what is desirable to you, what your fantasies are. Instead of acting things out in a destructive way. Instead of harming yourself because you want something that nobody else wants to talk about and it's forbidden and it's taboo. Like, what would it be to change that and be present with that and to share that with each other, which is what we're meant to do.
Yeah. And what an irony, looping back to what we were discussing, and then we'll look back on your carnal theory to round things out. What a funny thing that we know that we place so much importance on education and having these degrees, as we've discussed.
Yeah.
But when it comes to things that we know we're going to participate in, we would rather know nothing about it. And then when we are harmed, or others we know are harmed, those people are criminalized. And I'm not saying that it's not right for people to be criminalized in some ways. Like there's clear lines of right and wrong. And significant amounts of people who don't know what the right and wrong are because there's just not education. Like basic consent isn't taught. And we wonder when someone gets upset when the words no mean fuck off and you suck and all these come with all these other connotations. Yeah. We wonder why someone might get upset and doesn't just inherently understand what consent is. No means no. It's it's yes, it should be that, but we haven't provided the education for that
exactly.
to be understood.
Exactly.
And I want to be real clear here. As a survivor, I am not giving loopholes here. There are just things that you should not be doing, and people should know, and people should be.
But that's the unfortunate thing. That's the unfortunate thing. We should.
If a doctor messes up, we persecute. Our lines are very messed up.
They're very messed up. We are complex beings, right? With a lot of nuance. And what happened was they wanted to make everything binary. They wanted to make it black and white and straightforward and easy to explain. And we're not easy to explain. We're not easy to put in a box. We've tried to make it easy to put people in a box. And I'm going to say this. I'm also not advocating for people to have loopholes to get through things. However, everybody's been damaged by the way that we do things. And I think it's time we did things differently. I think it's time that we actually genuinely spoke and expressed, and it is hard, says the introvert. It is hard. But without that, I don't feel safe. I don't feel safe if I can't speak to you. I don't feel safe if I don't actually have enough time to get to know the kind of person that you are. I don't feel safe if you're afraid to even say the word sex. And that's where our society is at. We're afraid to say sex. We're afraid to say sex work. We're afraid to say that we have fantasies. We're afraid to say that we have desires. We're afraid to say we have lust. What kind of a place are we trying to live in when we're afraid of our own senses and feelings? Like, what kind of message are we giving? I find that bizarre and strange and wrong. But it's something that I think can only change over time. I think it's something that we each need to invest in ourselves first, and then see what happens when we start sharing with other people.
So go and check out the courses happening that you have happening. Oh, yes, please. And if you're in Berlin or the area, take a train over and check out Karada House.
Come and check out Karada House. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we're still doing stuff. I'm still doing live classes online as well. So there's access there, and there's amazing facilitators in Corado House doing crazy, amazing stuff online as well as in person. So don't feel like if you can't come to Berlin that you can't access. There's totally access there.
Yes.
Totally.
Thank you. And I just want to round out the conversation. Could you state the carnal theory that you'd brought for our consideration today one more time?
Yeah. So the carnal theory I brought today was intentional expression is powerful and desirable.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So an invitation for everyone listening and watching. Hold space maybe this week, either for yourself or for someone you know or don't know, quite frankly. And hold space for strangers, and that can be really beautiful. Yeah. And just want to thank you again, Caritia. Thank you so much for coming back on the show. It is always wonderful to talk with you. Thank you for bringing your beautiful Zen energy and your voice and your tone and all of your knowledge and experience.
Totally, yes.
And we encourage all of our listeners and watchers, please reach out to us with questions. You can reach us on our Instagram page at Carnal Theory or our main page at My Sex Bio. Please reach out to Caritia on her on their Instagram at Caritia, Caritia. Karada House at Karada, Karada_house. And the platform OhYesPlease with wonderful online resources, which is at OhYesPLZ_, and you will have some fun. Educate yourselves, empower yourselves. Go forth.
Go forth, enjoy.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Abby. Thank you, Diana. Thank you for having me back here on Carnal Theory. I appreciate you, appreciate the work that you're doing. And thank you for everybody who's watching and listening. I hope this offered some inspiration for you to continue to critically inquire about yourself, who you are and what you want. Boundaries are very important.
Thank you. Till next time. Carnal Theory is produced by My Sex Bio, an educational platform empowering people like you to take command of your sexual biography. Our sound design is by David Usma and theme music by Min the Universe. Video editing is by David Usma, and our assistant video editor and marketing coordinator is Maria Taruque. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube, and Spotify at My Sex Bio. Visit our website and join our e-letter at mysexbio.org and support our work by joining our Patreon. Thank you.